It was just past 3 a.m. when a metallic clang erupted from my barn, loud enough to jolt my rooster into a feathered panic. I shot upright in bed, clutching my blanket like it was a lifeline, my heart pounding as if a phantom had just river danced across my roof. Levying alone on a quiet farm, I knew my cows hadn't suddenly mastered lockpicking to sneak in a late-night telenovela session. Something or someone was in my barn, and it wasn't in VY Ted. Grabbing my flashlight, I shoved one foot into a boot and the other into a slipper, stumbling outside like I was auditioning for a low-budget horror flick. The barn door hung slightly ajar, creaking with that ominous groan Hollywood saves for axe murderer scenes. I froze, gripping the flashlight like a club. Inside, my goats, 2 barn cats, and a flock of chickens too old for drama usually kept things peaceful. But they didn't leave behind half-eaten granola bars or a neatly folded quilt in the hayloft, which I'd found a week ago. I'd chalked it up to a teenager CRAVYing solitude, cleaned it up, and moved on. But then it kept happening, each time weirder than the last. The second night, my flashlight glinted off a stainless steel thermos tucked in a corner, paired with a dogged romance novel and a pack of spearmint gum. The third night, I spotted cheap earbuds dangling from a nail, like someone had turned my hayloft into a cozy Airbnb. I hadn't told a soul yet, partly because I wasn't sure I believed it myself. I didn't want to be the crazy farmer ranting about ghosts in the straw. But the EVY Denke was real, and whoever it was wasn't stealing, just squatting, bold as brass. Finally, I spilled the beans to my buddy Jake, the town's resident conspiracy nut, who swore it was either a runaway, a secret knitting cult, or some VY-RAL social media stunt. He offered to camp out with a drone and a slingshot. I passed on that but took his ad VYC to set up a trail cam. The next morning, I nearly choked on my coffee when I checked the footage. There, in full color, wrapped in a floral bathrobe and fuzzy socks, was Linda Grayson the Linda, our HOA's self-appointed dictator, who once slapped me with a due law 150 fine for parking my tractor, 2 VY Sibley, on my own land. She was sprawled in my hayloft, sipping from her thermos, watching a melodrama on her tablet, my cats curled around her like she was their personal heater. I stared dumbfounded. Linda, the woman who terrorized the neighborhood with her clipboard and bylaws, was sneaking into my barn nightly to binge shows her husband apparently banned at home. I checked the HOA rules, but there was no clause for emotional trespassing. Still, I printed the photo and marched to her doorstep. She answered in a velour tracksuit, all suburban smugness, and I shoved the picture in her face without a word. Linda barely blinked. Cool as a cucumber, she claimed she was checking for vermin active VY tie. I asked what kind of rat needed a quilt and a soap opera. She gasped, feigning confusion, insisting the image was doctored. I told her my trail cam didn't come with Photoshop. That's when the tears started, a full-on crocodile sob fest. She wailed that her home life was stifling. Her husband had outlawed her shows, and she just needed a sanctuary. I didn't know whether to laugh or offer her a tissue. Before I could decide, she snapped back into HOA mode, warning that my barn VYOLAT updated curfew standards. I walked home, head spinning. She trespassed, confessed, cried, then threatened meal in 5 minutes. I figured the embarrassment would stop her. It didn't. That night she was back, this time with a pillow, turning my barn into her personal soap opera speakeasy. Through my window, I watched her sneak in with a tote bag, greeted by my traitorous cats. She unpacked snacks like she was settling in for a Netflix marathon. This wasn't just about escaping her house, it was about claiming my space. My heartburn flared as I paced the porch, not just from the trespassing but from her sheer audacity. The same woman who'd scolded me for planting daisies too near the HOA fence now thought she could colonize my barn because her Levying room lacked VY Bess. I knew cameras weren't enough. I needed a plan, loud, wet, and gloriously chaotic. The next morning, I called Jake and uttered the words I never thought I'd say. Let's build a siren in the barn. He rolled up in his rattling pickup, parking half on my lawn as usual, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Buddy, I've been waiting my whole life for this," he said, hauling out a motion sensor from his failed raccoon-proof feeder and an old police siren he'd snagged at a flea market. We wired them together, hid the setup behind a hay bale, and tested it. The wail was so loud it sent a goat tumbling into a water trough in panic. We knew we were onto something. But noise wasn't enough. We needed spectacle. Jake suggested motion-activated sprinklers, not gentle ones, but high-pressure jets hooked to an outdoor faucet and tied to the same sensor. After 2 hours, a near electrocution, and some colorful swearing, we had a system. Linda steps in, the siren screams, sprinklers drench, cats scatter, justice reigns. For flair, we hung a sign outside. Warning: experimental AGRI zone. Entry prohibited. Loud noises may cause spontaneous gas. Jake insisted the last bit was for giggles, but I knew it'd rattle Linda's cage. That night, I left the barn door ajar, baiting her to think I'd backed off. At 10:45 p.m., my phone buzzed with a camera alert. There was Linda, in silk pajamas, clutching her tablet and thermos, slipping inside like she owned the place. 2 seconds later, the night exploded. The siren howled, waking dogs 3 farms over. Sprinklers roared, blasting icy water and wild arcs. Through binoculars, I saw Linda flail, slip on wet hay, her tablet airborne, her slippers skidding like hockey pucks. She screamed, "Betrayal!" as she scrambled out, soaked and defeated, her robe clinging like a wet dish rag. She tripped over a bucket, tried shielding her hair with a pillow, and failed epically. And there, by the road, was Jake, live-streaming it all to the neighborhood chat with the caption, "Linda vs. Karma, Barn Edition." Comments flooded in laughing emojis, popcorn gifs, and one neighbor joking, "She's lucky he didn't add hornets." Linda, once the HOA's untouchable empress, was now the town's soggy punchline. But she didn't slink away. The next morning, she stormed my porch, tablet in hand, hair in a towel turban, claiming I'd booby-trapped private property. I reminded her she'd been trespassing for weeks. She ignored that, ranting about water damage and emotional trauma. I said, "Linda, you broke into my barn to watch soap operas." She blinked, then claimed she had a right to serenity. I told her I had a right to privacy. She threatened an HOA hearing. I pointed out my barn was an HOA turf. She sputtered, accused me of hostile landscaping, and flounced off, nearly wiping out on my steps. Word spread like wildfire. By noon, folks were honking and wah-vee-wahing as they drove by, one yelling I should charge admission. Jake taped a screenshot of Linda's sprinkler sprint to the feed store with the caption, "Local woman discovers rain." It sold extra feed bags from the laughs alone. But Linda wasn't done. 2 days later, a county SUV parked at her place. The next day, I got a noise complaint letter, whining about my siren disturbing sensitive residents. I called the county, explained it only triggered for intruders, and sent the footage. The clerk, Jake's cousin Sally, said it had already gone viral in their break room. Rules were rules, though she said I'd need a legal exemption or ditch the siren. The exemption hit me like a gift from the goats. Jake brought an HOA flyer from Linda's latest meeting, revealing her plan to annex part of my land including my barn for a Serenity Plaza, with a yoga deck and petting zoo. My deed confirmed the barn and a 15-foot buffer were mine, not her community garden. Sally helped me designate the barn an agricultural utility, under a farm protection ordinance, allowing alarms and deterrence. Linda's complaint was dead on arrival. To twist the knife, I added a sign. Authorized livestock training. No entry. Linda paced her driveway, glaring like she could ignite my fence with her rage. She struck again, claiming my goats were stressed by the siren. An animal control officer, Tom, inspected and laughed, saying my goats were happier than kids on a bounce house. Then I found strange paw prints and camera footage of a weasel Linda's pet triggering the sprinklers. My cats had cornered it in a feed bin, unharmed but spooked. Nearby was Linda's designer purse, dropped in her midnight raid. Inside? HOA papers, a county permit application with my address, and sketches for Linda's Zen barn, complete with an oil fountain and gift shop. She'd been plotting a takeover for months. I handed everything to Sally. This wasn't just trespassing, it was fraud. The county issued Linda a cease and desist for unauthorized access and misuse of HOA power. She vanished for a day, then retaliated with an HOA newsletter branding me a hostile land tyrant and calling my barn a biohazard. She pushed a petition to ban my fencing and signs. I laughed over breakfast, and Jake suggested a neighborhood barbecue. First, I dealt with her latest stunt, a pile of her garden trash, broken pots, torn yoga mats dumped on my land to frame me for illegal dumping. I documented it, filed reports, and Linda got a county warning for cleanup costs. She lost it, screaming across the fence that I'd ruined her peaceful neighborhood. I petted a goat and said, "Linda, you used my barn like a motel, and now you're mad I changed the locks." She threw her gloves down, vowing legal action. I invited her lawyer to bring boots. Then I doubled down, announcing the Barn Oasis, a weekly hangout with goat yoga and iced tea. 30 neighbors RSVP'd, bringing chairs and kids. Linda lurked, binoculars in hand, fuming as Officer Tom joined us for lemonade. When she tried sneaking in again, disguised in a hoodie, the sprinklers nailed her. I clapped. She kicked a bucket and fled. Jake's clip. Night Ninja returns. Went viral. Rumors swirled Linda was selling her house after HOA members revolted over her shady land grab. When her MOVing truck arrived, neighbors watched like it was the Super Bowl, sipping coffee and fake sweeping driveways. Linda waved like a pageant queen, but her face screamed defeat. Her for sale sign spun in the wind, no fanfare, just a goat bleating in the distance. The barn became a community hub, a deck for yoga, a stage for music. Jake, self-appointed barn bouncer, fed the cats jerky, and the goats adored him, especially Sarge, the gatekeeper. A new neighbor, Clara, a retired teacher with rabbits and killer brownies, moved in, laughing off the Linda legend. The HOA calmed, meetings shortened, and teens filmed documentaries at the barn. One night, Jake and I sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea, the barn glowing under starlight. He asked if Linda was ruling another HOA. I grinned. Bet they've got sprinklers. We laughed, the storm passed, the barn mine again. Defending it took noise, water, and grit, but Linda underestimated a farmer, his cats, and a barn that fought back.